Hey, best friends.
Welcome to the Bestie Advice Podcast. Where we discuss all things relationships.
Hey, besties. Welcome back to another podcast of the Bestie's Advice. I am your host, Irene Abrams, and I'm here with my bestie, Chywonna. Hey, girl.
Hey, besties.
We are so excited today. We have a special show. I'm very happy to bring in another dear best friend, a childhood friend of mine. Someone that knows like where all the bones are, right? So we have our bestie, Chywonna Gonzalez. Hey, Chywonna.
Hey, Chywonna.
Hi, you two. Hey, besties.
So today we're going to talk about a show. Most of our shows are very, informative, upbeat, but we're going to talk about a different topic. We're going to go a little deep today, and we're just going to really look at the topic of grief and how we're managing grief. And grief is a part of relationships. We lose people that are close to us, and something that we have in common, myself and Kiran and Chywonna, we have the loss of our fathers. Yes. And so that's something we share. And you out there that are listening to us, that are watching us on YouTube, you might have that in common with us. So we're going to discuss managing grief. And we chose Chywonna because I've known her since I was 13 years old. And I know a lot about her family, about her husband and different people in her life that I have witnessed and stood with her that have passed. And so I believe she's a good person that can really help us process what grief looks like. What does it look like on the other side? How do you deal with it? How do you deal with death of a spouse when you have children, twins, and then your mom and dad? And so she's handled all of this with such grace and such dignity. And it's really an honor for me to have her. And our background is I've known her since I was 13 years old. I think I was 12 and she was 13, actually. We met at church, like me and Kiran. You see the commonality. We met at church, and it's funny. My first impression of her, she walked in church with shades on. I was like, okay, all right, girl. She was a diva. She came in with some shades, but her dad was a deacon at the church where my grandfather was the pastor, and it was only a very few girls there that were the same age. And her and I just kind of naturally bonded, and we grew up together. She watched me go through puberty. She watched me become a teenager, a young adult. She was in my wedding. She watched me mature as a woman. And so, it's really an honor to have her, on here to really just to present another side of me and my life, someone that grew up with me in Kansas, as well as having her talk about her journey and what she's been through with grief. So welcome to the show, Chywonna. We are so excited to have you.
You're gonna make me cry. You almost did. I'm holding it.
So, Kiran, when you and I, when we went through like the topics we wanted to have for season 3, we both agreed that we wanted to really look at grief. Yes. And so, share with our audience why we felt that was important to kind of look at, and then we'll transition to our interview with Chywonna.
So, hey, everybody. Again, welcome as far as to this episode. Well, I know as far as when it comes to grief, I believe that everyone handles it, but the thing is handling it the appropriate way. I don't believe that there's like a right way or a wrong way, but I do believe that it's an appropriate way to actually handle grief. And with the position that I hold as far as in my church, being a pastor's wife, I see, our different members, they may pass away, or some of our members, their loved ones pass away, and you're there for them, and you can kind of see the ups and the downs. You see like all sides of families handling grief or not handling grief. And I do believe that we should handle it. If you don't handle it, I do believe it will handle you. It will take over you. It will take over your life. So I do think that's something that we actually do need to talk about, talk about as far as females, as males, as family members, as loved ones, how to be able to even support one another. Even if you have not experienced losing someone, but you have a good friend or spouse, and they may have lost someone, how to even help them and support them. And it's not always about, saying, oh, I understand, because if you've never experienced it, that's one thing you don't say is I understand. But it's a right way to actually be there for them. It's not even about you having the right words. Sometimes it's just about being there. So I know as far as with you, Chywonna, there's different levels of grief that you have actually experienced. So before I even ask any questions, if you can just share a little bit as far as about some of your loved ones that you have actually lost over the past few years.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad to be here, and I'm glad to help, with this topic. And it's something that's not really popular, that a lot of people
absolutely
don't talk about. And when Irene asked me to come on and to talk about it, she gave me enough time to just process it, because it's a process, and the level of loss that I've had has been different. It's at a level at this age, that most people don't get to or have to experience, and so at a very young age, I really never thought about that, or really never thought, that this would be what I would be going through. But I mean, of course, I, like Irene said in the introduction, that I lost my husband. And so we have twins, we have boy girl twins, and I lost him when they were 5. And so they're 13 now, they're thriving, they're doing, really good in life. But that was a pretty early on, enough for them to have memories, of him and their interactions with him, but still very young in age. And so it just kind of progressed over time. I have I've also lost my parents, and so more recently my dad here, but my mom passed away 5 years ago, so she passed 3 years after my dad, after my husband Leo. And then I just recently lost my dad. And so this past April. So it's just, it's been years in between, the losses, but it's still, you have to go through the process from the beginning of every one of those relationships, and how do you do that in a, like you said, a healthy way.
Yes.
And I'm grateful for having, my church family, and the pastor bringing me in and saying there's a good way to do it and there's a bad way to do it. Like, you need to pick the good way. And I can't say that I always chose that.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of loss, it was challenging. And Irene knows this, about me, personally, but it was challenging. And then more recently, after my dad passed in April, I lost an aunt. My mom's last living sister passed, and she was also the only person who had boy-girl twins like me. So we had a really close relationship, and shared a lot of stuff about, the twins. And I'm just grateful for, with grief, what I'm grateful for, since my husband, and then all of those progressions, is that my relationship with those individuals.
Yeah.
I found a lot of peace with the relationships that I had with them. And so the grief became easier, as the time came. And I know that probably sounds weird, but being good to them and just taking every moment to just value your loved ones is so important.
Absolutely.
And it will help with grief. It will help because that you did the best, and you know that you gave them the most respect, and
Yeah.
you really valued your time with them, and you did what you could, when they were here. And that's really honestly, unfortunately, I had a lot of loss, but at the same time, the lives mattered, and the time, the quality of time that I spent with them really mattered. And so I can't say that I don't miss them, but I can
Yeah.
say that it got easier because I figured out, my husband just lived each day to the fullest, and I let him do his thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
whatever made him happy, once we, kind of knew what he was dealing with, then he got to enjoy that,
Yeah.
and without me giving him any trouble. So I find a lot of peace in that he got to be himself, and he got to live life to the fullest, and lots of memories were made because we knew he had a long-term illness.
Mm-hmm.
And so we knew that was the way that things were going to go. And so I have so much to share with the twins, and so many funny, things. And, I'm grateful for that, because they just look back when they went to their first pumpkin patch, which is
Yeah.
getting ready to come up.
Mm-hmm.
And I could play slideshows, and things for them to see him with them, and,
Mm-hmm.
them first starting to talk and things
Yes.
like that. So every season I have memories to share. And I'm just grateful that God gave me the opportunity to know and get this, get it captured,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so we were married for 11 years, just in case
Yeah.
anybody's wondering. And our 1 year anniversary was him getting a pacemaker.
Wow.
So we
Okay.
spent it in a heart hospital. And so we knew what we were dealing with. And we were still blessed with the children. We received a double portion,
Yeah.
which is what
Yes.
we were paying for. We were praying for that all the time, and he was a prayer warrior. I mean,
Yeah.
he was on the prayer team, at our church, and that's kind of how we met. Is
Wow.
Yeah.
through church. I was on the media ministry, and he was on the prayer ministry, and we met that way. So,
Wow.
but yeah,
That's a
I mean,
blessing.
that was a long run. So,
Yeah.
I tried to pause so you can edit it, but uh, yeah, I mean, that's my answer.
Okay. So it was a lot of things that you actually just said, and I want to just kind of pick a few things out of there.
Sure.
So I know you did mention as far as with your family and having your family, there with you. And I want to kind of connect it as far as actually with the three of us. Um I think everybody kind of handle grief again differently, but handling it in a healthy way. I like the way you said that. Handling it in a healthy way. And we all have multiple siblings. Thank God the way God set it up for us, that He did not leave us out there by
Yeah.
ourselves to deal with it on our own. And I know as far as just personally with me, just having, yes, my mom is still there, love my mom, but having my brother and sister right there, with me or whatever, it actually helped me with my grief. Now we
Mhm.
all do it differently, and our way. Others may say, yeah, something is wrong with you all. When I say, I mean, we're telling jokes, or whatever, jokes as far as like about my dad, we're always bringing light to things. And again, if someone else was in the room, they'll say that joke is wrong. You should not have said it that way. But it's like, no, like I'm just going to say, something as simple as, well, yeah, let's make sure we tell daddy, to come with us. You may have made a mistake because you're so used to saying, yeah, we got to make sure we include daddy. And my sister would say, well, if he's coming, then I'm not going to be there. Things like that. Someone else may say, what?
Right.
Oh my God. But it's like, that's how we kind of get over
Yeah.
things. We'll sit there like, and then we'll just laugh about it. But that's just us and our relationship. So I want to ask you, as far as even like with your siblings, and also you too, Irene, but Chywonna, with you and your siblings, like how did you all deal with it together as far as your grief, or you being able to go to them about your husband, as far as about your mom and your dad and even your aunt?
Girl, They were tired of hearing about my husband. Okay. What I experienced is, before our mom and our dad passes, what I experienced, and Irene definitely knows this, is that they were tired of it. They were tired of it. They felt
They
like
didn't understand it though. That was the thing.
they didn't understand it. And not until and that's the thing about grief, is that not until you actually experience that, it doesn't, I don't even know if it needs to be the person, like that person. But once you have been through it, I got so many apologies from my family members because they just couldn't connect with the fact that Leo had passed in the way that I did. And so what I experienced was every first thing, wedding anniversary, his birthday, there was so many things that triggered me, his first Christmas after he passed, we wore pajamas because I just didn't have the strength to get us dressed. So I found holiday pajamas to go to the family dinner. And is that depressing? Yes, to others, but it's what I had the strength to do with some little kids, and they were cute. And Christmas, we always spend it at home. So we never went to a family gathering because the kids are at home and you got the Christmas tree and they're opening their presents and they want to focus on their presents. So but that year after he passed, that was a very difficult time. And I did the best that I could, with making it still festive for them as children. But all of those dates. So I just felt like, after a while, people, my family in itself were exhausted. Their hearts went out, but they just weren't connected to it in a way. And so when we lost my mom, then I got a different reaction. Of, I don't even know how you did that. And so not, and it wasn't necessarily rewarding, but it validated, for me, how them experiencing it made it real. And it's not that they didn't miss Leo, but he just wasn't their husband. He wasn't their husband. And so this is Leo, by the way.
That's Leo.
Yeah,
that's him.
I think with Chywonna too, with her siblings, so there's 10 of them, and Chywonna's child number 9. And so she's from Arkansas. So they really, it's different. Well, not so much because Kieran, you're the oldest and I'm the oldest, but they really believe like the oldest is the next in charge. So when you get down to Chywonna, child number 9, she just gonna go along, get along. You know what I'm saying? She's like, okay, thank you for letting me know. They just like, baby, we just passing you the information down. So when she
do what I say,
husband, right? It's like, you're gonna do what I say. And so when she lost her husband, they just didn't understand it. Like they didn't get it because they hadn't been through it. But then when they lost their mom, and then the oldest had to really kind of deal with it, like it was a different type of grief because like, wait, this is our mom. And Chywonna's family, how they come together is they sing. So they're singers, and so they sing. And I just don't understand why one of her sisters, Trina, she's like, she should have been the next Fantasia. Like I'm still trying to figure out why she I'm waiting on the album, right? So they're all like singers, and so they come together, and it's nothing for them to sing for hours. They sing at all their family functions. So when you ask like how do they come together, it's this is me like knowing them like since being a child. They sing, they come together, but again, the difference between you and I is like, when my dad and my granddad, even my grandmother, it was a lot of weight that was put on my shoulders as and I carried a lot. I had to carry that for my brother, and my two sisters. And they really looked to me for guidance. And so I had to be the strong one because I couldn't be weak. I had to bury them in grace, and I had to be diplomatic. I had to be, a referee, keeping them from falling apart. As you, Huron, as the oldest, a lot of the weight is placed upon your shoulders, whether you want it or not. Chywonna didn't necessarily feel that weight with her parents as much as she did with her husband, because when it came to her parents, her sisters and her older brothers more so took the brunt of those responsibilities, and she just kind of was like, whatever was her role.
And my mom wanted it that way because she already knew what I was dealing with. And so I'm the first college graduate, in my family. And so, there are others that went to college before me, but I'm the first one. And so she gave me a lot of responsibility early on. But after losing Leo, I think she really evaluated it and said she just doesn't have the strength to deal with it if something happened to me. So, she gave that responsibility to others, who could actually could actually deal with that, and the loss, because I really struggled with Leo, passing. And so, she was very sensitive to that. But Irene, you definitely are the oldest, and you were in a position to run things, and make decisions. And a lot of that, I didn't have to necessarily do for, my mom and my dad and my aunt, so I played a lesser role, but definitely, being the oldest is probably really hard. Karan?
She knows. Kiran knows. She's the oldest as well.
But I can say this though, that even when my dad passed, yes, I'm the oldest, but the way that my parents had things set up, my mom and dad actually had a conversation like a couple of weeks prior to my father passing. So for those of you out there, my father, he passed suddenly, July of last year. He was not sick or anything like that. It was literally one morning on my way with my husband to go have a meeting with one of the young ladies at church. Had my laptop with me because we're, in the midst of the pandemic, so I'm working from home. My sister calls, not knowing it's my sister because my phone said daddy. And I actually answered the call like, hey, daddy. And she's like, no, this is Stephanie. And everything goes from there. And but they had my mom and dad had just had a conversation a couple of weeks ago. And they were talking about, would he be buried or would he be cremated? So they had already talked about everything. So when it came time for my brother and sister, my mom to sit down, it was no like, oh my God, I want this. No, he wants that. None of that. And my mom was right there. So we looked at her. What do you want to do? And what do you want to do? And what do you want to do? So it really was not a heavy time for us dealing with that. It was a heavy time, but dealing as far as with the particulars or whatever of his funeral, that was light. I thank God that it was, but that was a light situation. So it really did not really fall on any of us because it was already kind of planned.
Yeah, see, my dad and my grandpa, they were already ill. It was just, we didn't know when. Like, we knew they were ill. We just didn't know. And like, my dad had cancer, but he died from a heart attack, right?
Yeah.
So, but we knew he had cancer. My grandfather, we knew he had cancer. It was just a of time. My grandfather, my dad's funeral was very easy. I mean, he was a retired military, the military literally, my dad wasn't married. And so everything was signed over to me. Like my dad and I had that conversation 2 years prior to him dying, where he signed everything over to me. I was his only beneficiary. And he said, I'm coming to you as my oldest. I know that you will do what's right. I want your brother and your sisters to have everything, but I know you will split it 4 ways. It's easier for me to make you my beneficiary 100% and knowing that you will do right. And of course, he knew me. He knew that I was going to do what was right. And so all I had to do was, because the military already had everything, I just picked out me and my youngest sister, Kathy. She was with me at the time. Her and I just went, we just literally like, we want this. We filled it out and the military paid for everything.
So Chywonna, I have one more question for you. How have you been handling or managing your grief?
Well, initially, I decided to get some counseling, and go for our family to go through grief counseling because the kids were just so young, that I needed them to be able to tell me what they thought. And to be honest, it was probably when they turned about 8 that they were really honest, about how they felt. And it wasn't great. I've continued to just continue to go through therapy and myself personally, and just make sure that they had people and role models like family members, the male role models that we have in our lives and things like that. When they went to school, they knew that, Leo had passed, at that time. So at those key times, those dates, of knowing, they know right around Valentine's Day, that we both did dates, and so Leo took Orlando to see a movie. I went with Olivia to see a movie.
Okay.
So they know in February that's like around the time that he died because they were really young. Something else that I do is I try not to remind them of the key dates. But I do make sure that, I've always tried to make sure as they've grown up that people who can support them in school and stuff like that are aware that they may feel some kind of way pretty early on.
Okay.
But, with all the memories and stuff like that, that's the thing that we do the most is, share memories and the pictures where, he was asleep and they got a hold of some powder. They couldn't even walk. And they got a hold of baby powder by the bed when he was taking a nap. And they just covered him with, from head to belly, just tumbling around the bed, and he was asleep. And it's the best picture ever. And so I go and find things like that. And I do slideshows, seasonal stuff to where like Halloween's coming up. So they'll be able to see some of their first words, even just not even being able to enunciate, undo, they weren't doing, consonants and stuff like that. And so it's just about keeping his memory alive, getting the help definitely for me to continue to strive after, racing them over the last, 8 years.
Join us next time for part 2. Thanks for joining us today. See you next time.